And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Chrystal Rae, who after her Jeep went off an 80-foot cliff, had a near-death experience that catalyzed a profound spiritual awakening. Chrystal, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Such a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, it's a great pleasure having you. And if you don't mind, can we just start with the day you went off the cliff and go from there?
Sure. So my story started on just an ordinary day, that like any other. I was on a trip in Colorado, and I was actually on my way back to the airport. And on the way back, we were going up a mountain, which we should have been going down, but anyway, that's another story. We were going up a mountain. It was like about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was kind of blizzardy, to tell you the truth, and the icy roads and all that you can imagine. So we started to spin, and we ended up sideways on the road. The person coming down the mountain, of course, couldn't stop because of the ice, hit my side of the car. And that's when my whole like world changed, because I mean, as the car was spinning, like time slowed down, and it was as though time didn't really exist. And there was really no fear for me. It was almost like I was a spectator of the whole scene. And I remember the guy driving, he was like so frantic. And I had my cousin in the back seat, and she was screaming. And there was just this like really crazy peace that came over me. Probably a result of a childhood near-death experience that I had, but that's another story that we don't really need to talk about today. But I had another near-death experience when I was a child. And so I always knew that this was not it. And I had gone on a deep spiritual search as a child, going to all these different churches and looking for this unconditional love that I had felt. And so when this happened, all of a sudden, it was like everything slowed down. And I remember thinking, oh, wow. My reaction to death was, I didn't know I was going to die today. It was just like a surprise. I think probably when we die, like we permanently die, that's probably how it feels for us, is that we're like somehow, even though death is always looming for everyone, we know it's part of life. It's like the day that you die, you're like sort of surprised. You're like, what? Wait. And I was a young woman, I was like 30 something years old, and I was newly divorced, and it wasn't really in my, I hadn't really thought about like today I'm going to die. That wasn't really in my plans for the day. So everything kind of slowed down, and I remember just feeling so much compassion for the other people in the car, the guy driving, my cousin, because there was so much fear. And I remember looking back at my cousin thinking I had never seen such horror, like absolute horror on anyone's face. And I was just like, just stunned. And then I was out of my body. I was in the presence of a luminous, really radiant light, a being. It wasn't really a being, but it was like a presence. And I felt completely supported and cared for. And I was shown, as many people have in a near-death experience, I was shown my life in a three-dimensional panoramic view, which was really interesting to me because I not only saw the poignant moments, I saw every moment, but in particular, I saw the poignant moments where I was kind or where I was unkind, and how that rippled out eternally, affecting everyone and everything. And that was kind of shocking to me, like how it was infinite, like ad infinitum, and never stopped. Like, even after you die, every kind word, every unkind word, every action, every inaction was still rippling out and affecting the universe in ways that was like colliding and creating universes that we can't even imagine, that we are that kind of powerful beings. And so I was shown all these things, forward, backwards, ripple effect. There was sorrow, there was joy, there was all kinds of experiences going on, but there was no judgment and there was no condemnation. There was really just a lot of compassion for me. And I remember a couple of things that were really poignant in this moment, as I was shown that three very poignant things. One, that I had never really seen the sun rise or set. And of course I had seen that, but I was shown like the relevance of like the sun rising and setting, how the beginning of the day, the end of the day, the metaphoric possibilities of every single breath of life that was mirrored in that. And then I was shown, secondly, that I had never really smelled freshly cut grass, which is really a weird thing, right? And I was just like overwhelmed with this beautiful aroma of freshly cut grass and just the beauty of our senses. And then thirdly, I was shown that I had never really reached out and touched some, like physically embraced somebody. Like I had, of course, I had two children and 4 miscarriages, and I obviously touched someone, but in very intimately, and I combed my children's hair and I'd hug people, but there was always kind of like a little wall or little barrier of safety between me and that person where I never really connected. Um, and I was shown this not from a place of judgment. It was actually just shown. And I was remember thinking, wow, I didn't know what I didn't know, and now I'm gonna die, and it's too late. And there was just this kind of sadness about it. The other thing I was shown is that my life, I grew up in a very dysfunctional home, the normal American home, I guess. I grew up in a dysfunctional home with an alcoholic mother, absent father. And so I became an adult really, really early in my life. I was, maintaining the house, cooking dinner, 7 years old. I was, trying to, tiptoeing over my drunken mother to go to school. And, I had bald spots and bruises and, all the stuff that comes with that kind of a upbringing. And so I had this, I always, you know, I didn't tell you about the childhood thing, but when I was a kid and I had this near death experience, one thing that I realized right before I fell off this counter, which we'll talk about later, was that, in our house, I always make the joke that God didn't really exist except he was, unless he was damned, because it was a goddamn. So I didn't really have a spiritual or a religious upbringing, but I had heard the stories of Jesus and heaven and hell and pits of fire and all this stuff. And I remember my mom, wasn't religious, but she would occasionally tell me I was a bad girl and I was going to end up in hell with these pit of fire and snakes and all this stuff. And I remember thinking, I couldn't really sign up for that kind of God. Like I was really young. I was like 13 years old. And I was thinking, I don't want to be good to avoid hell. And I don't want to be good to get like streets of gold and heaven. Like I just truly want to be good. And that was like my first real experience of self-worth. Because I remember in that morning, in that moment, I was just like, that means I am good. Like I understood like that because I wanted to be good for goodness sake, just to be good. And like even if my existence completely was void and empty after I died, I still wanted to do good and be a good person. And that was just kind of like my beginning of this new experience of Chrystal that suddenly had self-worth because she realized that she just wanted to be good because she was a good person. So fast forward to the flying off the cliff experience and coming back to that divine being of light. And I mean, I was shown that yes, that I had always wanted to be good, but it was a feeling of like a heavy backpack, like this heavy backpack of I got to be good, I got to be a good mother, I got to take care of my children, I got to be a good daughter, take care of my parents, I got to be a good wife, a good ex-wife, a good friend, a good this. But it was like a heavy backpack, and there was no joy. My life was joyless. It was just, I was, post divorce, maybe a year out, and I was just, I felt like a failure, like Cinderella's, slipper didn't fit, or like more like a fraud, like somebody had unveiled the curtain and the truth was out that I was this flawed little girl that, who was never good enough, really, basically, unworthy of love. And, when I got divorced, I mean, it was just like proof, like I was not, you know, even though, I was a model and I was this and that, but, I felt like he unveiled the curtain and the proof was out that I wasn't good enough. And so there was a lot of sadness and still I wanted to do good and be good. And then I was shown, but, you know, like there's a joy in being good, but not because it's a responsibility. And that I hadn't had that joy. And I was told precisely these words and told to put this in a book. It's like each soul, including your soul, is here for the absolute bliss of your own experience. And that was like, what? Like had no idea. I thought I was here to be responsible. Thought I was here to be good. I was do the right thing. And, I was like, I'm here for bliss. Like I had no idea. Like, and I was shown it was absolute bliss that my soul wanted to be here and to have all these challenges. And I was like so sad about it because I was like, wow, I had no idea. And and now I'm gonna die and it's too late. I mean, I said, oh well. It was kind of like an oh well. And with that, I mean, I'm telling you all of this, and like this is seconds, right? So we're hit by this car, my side of the car, 50 miles an hour, I think they estimated the car going. My side, I ended up at the foot of the car because I didn't have my seatbelt on. So I went down to where the feet are. My cousin is in the back seat of this little red Jeep, and her head is hitting the roll bar from this side to that side to this side to that side. The guy is frantic. Time is slowed down. I'm at the bottom of where your feet are, all curled up in a little ball down there. And I'm being shown, I'm in this absolute bliss watching all this from above in this divine space with the being held with absolute compassion and love, watching my entire life, poignant moments, sparkling moments, shameful moments, all held in compassion, being taught all these amazing lessons. And I'm like, oh, wow, it's too late now. So my last conscious thought before I guess we started rolling and hitting the ground and tumbling was that I didn't know I was going to die today. There was some sorrow about that because I didn't know, I'd never really experienced the joy that I was shown that each soul is here to exist. Oh, by the way, it was also told to put in my book, which I did, my new book that's called Love Letters to Your Soul. I was also told to put in the book, Sound and Light is the Future of Medicine. So I was pretty excited about that. And I was like, okay. Um, so I was shown this, but then I thought, well, now I'm going to die. Oh, by the way, I was shown multiple realities and possibilities for my soul. So nothing is set. Yeah, I said, I got to come back and write this book, but that was one possible timeline that I could just jump onto. There was many others. I could come back and had some serious physical disabilities as a result of the accident. I could have died, and I was not only shown that I had these multiple destinies. And it's kind of hard to comprehend how everything is compacted into so much knowledge within such a short time and space, which is probably seconds, right? If anything, a minute. But I was shown like all of these possible destinies, and I've shown them like fast forward and played out. Not only that, I was shown this destiny would end up like this is another. So I was shown that everything happening in the eternal now and all possibilities have already come into completion. Um, and we can shift timelines anytime we want in our life. We can have a totally new life. But I was shown that this time, this choice would lead this way, this choice would lead this way, but all the timelines were out. And the one that I chose, and then the one that we all choose, whether consciously or unconsciously or by default, is that which brings us most joy and bliss. And so the one that brought me the most joy was to come back, follow the inspiration of this divine being to write a book that literally was told, if you follow this timeline, you will come back and you will write a book. And the message of the book will be love is all that matters. And in that book, you're going to talk about sound and light being the future of medicine. And I thought that was amazing. That was like the one that gave me the most joy. And I was also shown that if I were to take some of these other timelines, for example, if I were to die, I was shown that even my children would be fine, which was kind of shocking to me. I had thought that my life and as their mother, very doting mother, and I kind of did the opposite of my parents. Like I was trying to overcompensate probably and be like the super mom, because I wanted to give them all the things that I never had. I did a lot of healing, psychological work and spiritual work to heal myself so that I wouldn't continue the chain of abuse and hurt onto my children, which I think I did the best job I could. I could have probably done better, as we all can, but I think I did a really good job with them. I'm proud of my children. They've turned out so beautifully. But anyway, so I was showing them, and in one of these timelines that, that they would be married, they would have children, they'd be fine without me. And I was like, what? That was also shocking. And so, and the point of them showing this divine being showing me was that you're not here to take care of your children. Your children have their own mission. You're here because your soul is important. It is so important that the entire universe would dissolve and disappear and be non-existence without you. And when I say you, I don't mean just me. I mean every single soul that exists, every little ant, every little beetle, every little grain of sand is essential, because I was shown that love is the source of all things in the universe. I can't even put it into words that really make it real, because love is such a small word in comparison to what I'm talking about. But the source of all things, the love that animated all things into existence, um, that which is most beautiful and necessary, only that which is most beautiful and necessary comes into being. And that's hard to think about when you think about Hitler's and murderers and all the horror that's happening. But in a divine perspective, a broader perspective, all things work for the good, and nothing really is happening to the soul. So it's not an unkind universe. As a matter of fact, when people are in great pain, let's say someone's been blown up in you know, a big explosion, they're popped out of their body because there's no reason in a kind and loving universe for someone to be in such pain. Even women who've had really hard pregnancies and deliveries will many times pop out of their bodies because the universe is kind. It's because I was like, how can the universe allow such pain, and sorrow? And I was shown that the soul longs for this. It wants the contrast. It wants the choice. It wants the chance to experience itself in all the myriad uh, expressions of self possible, the shadows and the light. And it's such a great gift to have this physical embodiment and to be able to viscerally experience that which we know on a soul level. We know, like when people say, oh, I want to be enlightened. Well, enlightenment, that's your starting space. I mean, you're not going to get enlightened. You're going to start unblocking your eyes from that which is keeping you from seeing the truth of your own existence and the truth of all existence, which is pure love, pure light in an energetic universe that we live in. And so it was this really poignant moments of wisdom and all this condensed knowledge that was just kind of like dropped upon me in these few moments. And then suddenly, I'm flipping, and then I went into, like, I guess I went unconscious, or I went into a dark space, and I ended up at the bottom of this 80-foot cliff, on this icy cliff. We slammed into upside down into a wall of ice, basically, and we came to a sudden halt. And I remember when I came to like some kind of consciousness, I was shocked, number one, that I was alive, or I was in some kind of space. I didn't even really know that I was alive. I was actually kind of shocked that I was in a dark space, even though there was light in the distance, because my last thought was, okay, well, it's too late now, because I was shown all these great things and it was too late for me. Like, I hadn't had joy. I hadn't really known the bliss of my own existence. I hadn't really, had a fulfilling life, because I had been just weighted down with all this responsibility. And so I was like, oh, well, now I'm going to go into the light. And I was kind of, truthfully, kind of excited about it. I'm not going to lie. I was kind of excited to go into the light. And so when I woke up and it was dark at the bottom of this cliff, I was a bit disappointed. And then I was like, wait, there's no light. Where's the light? And then I saw the headlights, and I saw the wheels spinning, and I smelled gasoline, and I realized, oh, I'm still alive. There was this great joy about still being alive. And I was like, I'm alive. Like, I get to write that book. I get to see my children. They're not going to be orphans. And then I was really a lot of sudden fear came over me, because I could smell gasoline and the wheels were rolling. And I was like, oh my God, this car is going to explode. And I was really wanted to hug my children again. I really wanted to live. And in a way that I had never really wanted to live, because I think I secretly just didn't even really like life. And I think that's one of the reasons I attracted, because I think this is a magnetic universe. I think I attracted the near-death experience because I don't even think I really wanted to be here. Um, I think on some level, just a really harsh world. And it was really, oh, it's gonna make me cry. I always cry. I talk about this stuff, so sorry about that. But I just remember thinking, like, this is such a harsh world. And there's so much pain, and not only my pain, like just the pain of humanity. And I remember, just thinking, like, not really even a conscious thought, but it's hard for this like pure love energy to come into such contrast, even if it's a joyful thing. And so I remember thinking, I just don't know that I want, to be here. And it was like this unconscious thing. And it felt almost like a little ashamed to think that, because in many ways my life is so blessed. I had all the material things that you could possibly want. I was blessed with this beautiful body and a beautiful brain, and I had these beautiful children. And even though I was divorced and I felt broken, I mean, I was living better than 95% of the people on the planet. So there was this like almost like the haves and the have not, and this kind of guilt about, feeling so unhappy when I had so much compared to so many others. I mean, I had lived in my dad was in the Air Force, and I had lived in Okinawa, and I had lived in Mexico, and I had seen a lot of poverty in the United States. My mom was divorced with 3 children. We lived on welfare, and we had no money. So, I mean, I had this opulent life after, I married a very bright man who went from rags to riches pretty quickly, and we lived a very opulent life in Mexico, which didn't turn out well. I told you I got divorced, but was really a really good experience for me because I really loved this man. I remember that. I still do. I don't think you can ever turn love off, even though I'm remarried. I'll always love him as the father of my children. But I remember when we were getting divorced, like I remember signing I didn't even get a lawyer, which I know when you're in a lot of money, like people are all about getting lawyers. And I remember just thinking, I'm not cutting the couch in half. And he's a decent man. And so he spent like a year, I think, moving all his assets. And then he brought the papers and I signed them. He was like so happy, because I guess, I didn't get a lawyer, didn't anything. I just said, show me where I get the kids. Show me what you're willing to give me and I'll sign away. Because I mean, I really didn't get married for money. Like I got married for love. And I really did love this guy, and I will always love him. I realize that he's probably one of my most important soulmates, and I'll tell you why. Um, and it relates really closely to my near-death experience. So I signed the papers. It was like this beautiful, afternoon, sunny day, sun is out, birds are chirping. And like I signed the paper, he looks super happy. He's glad to be out of this and kind of got away with everything he wanted and done with this marriage that was just quite dysfunctional because we had different value systems. I wanted to be in a marriage where it was like a little more connection, and he really wasn't at the space where he could do that. He was just more connection with everybody. So that wasn't going to work for me. Um, then I really remember like laying all curled up in my bed, and it was like such a dark day because I was like, again, felt broken, unworthy, all that stuff. And then he had already had another girlfriend, of course, and I was not about to even date. I didn't even date for a year and a half. Um, and that was just barely. But I remember her, she was blonde. I mean, I was blonde, she was brunette. I was a little older, she was a little younger. Her name was Michelle. And I remember thinking, well, and this is the most beautiful thing I think that I learned from this. I hope she's good to him. I hope she loves him. I hope she doesn't hurt him. And I'm like in the darkest day of my life, and all I can think about is like, I hope she's good to him. And I was like, that is unconditional love. Like I did not even know a love like that existed. And it was almost as though the sun burst through the clouds, and I realized that love is indeed the most powerful force in the universe. And it healed me in that moment because I realized I could love like that. I didn't want to be in that relationship anymore. But I realized when people say, "Oh, I don't love him anymore," or "I don't love her anymore," I'm like, you truly never did. I mean, you can set boundaries and you can decide, I don't want to be with that person for sure. That's for sure. But love it doesn't stop. And so one of the things in my near-death experience, I was really kind of confused. It's like, why would you choose me, the broken little girl, the one who can't even, keep a relationship going, to talk about love? And I was shown because I had a really pure heart and I truly could love in a way that was unconditional. Just really a great gift, to have that kind of thing. And I know when I look, like, I don't really have the capacity to hate. I mean, I hate things that have happened and I don't like them, but I don't ever hate people, even people who've really hurt me. I can't. It's like not in me. Because all I do is I look at them and I see like whatever is broken in them that's making them do that. It's not the truth of them, not the truth of me either. Like in my moments of being unkind, we're all prey, we're all predators at some point in our life. I mean, I'm sure there's someone out there who says, Chrystal, she's the one who hurt me the most. I'm sure of it. Just like there's others that I would say, well, this person hurt me the most. Not that I wanted to hurt them, but I'm sure there's somebody that will say she's the one, like she was the one who was unkind, who disregarded me, who said the unkind word. And, even your children, they'll call you out because as much as I wanted to be a good mother, like I'm sure I failed my children in many ways that I don't even know about and unconsciously. So fast forward back to, tumbling down this cliff, ending up at the wall of ice, and then I call out this upside down and I'm like, oh my God, I'm alive. So I call out to my cousin. There's no answer. The guy who's driving, I say, are you okay? He says, yes, but I don't think I can move. And I'm like, okay, let me go get help. And so luckily I'm in good shape. I like scale up this 80-foot cliff and I get to the top. And of course, there's this big long line of, cars. Everybody stopped looking over the cliff. And I guess nobody could even believe that I had climbed up that cliff, icy cliff, by the way. And I got up there and I was like, we need help. There's two more people down there. So, they started the ambulances and this, and then this really weird thing started to happen. Like I started having all these premonitions. And I know a lot of people who've had near-death experiences talk about this, but I could feel everyone's feelings and I knew everyone's thoughts, which I did not want to know. This really weird thing started to happen where I had all these premonitions. And I suddenly saw I simply saw these firemen or something, some man with plastic boots, big plastic boots. And like, I saw him like, I had just gone to this like really cool store in Vale and bought all these spiritual books, which I was really excited about reading these books. And also I had my purse in the car and my airline tickets. So I wanted my purse, but I had this premonition of this man with rubber boots, like taking my purse, taking my books, taking all my stuff. And so I started sort of freaking out. And I was like, hey, can somebody, they were all going down this cliff, bring my purse back. I need my purse. I have a bag of books. And I saw that that wasn't going to happen. And I was so upset about it. And then they pulled my cousin up. She was unconscious, really seriously injured. They pulled the guy who was driving the car up. He was also pretty injured. Um, I I somehow felt pretty unscathed. They took my cousin in a care flight to the hospital. They took me and the guy who was driving in separate ambulances, and we went to the hospital. I got to the emergency room, and you know, my neck was kind of hurting, and so they were taking X-rays of my neck. But when I first walked in, um, my cousin, had already arrived before I got there, and um, and there was a nurse there. It was a male nurse, and he's like, "Were you guys drinking?" And of course, I came from this alcoholic home, and I think one of the things that happens with alcoholic children, you either go into it or you completely repulsed by it. Well, I took the repulsed by it. I never drank. I think I drank once or twice in my entire life, and that was enough for me. And I said, no, we weren't drinking. And the guy who was driving actually had like a couple of glasses of wine, but he definitely hadn't drank a lot. And we didn't get in an accident because of drinking. I said, no, we weren't drinking. And he said, well, your cousin is going to die. And I remember, what? Like I had just come out of this trauma and he's like screaming at me that I was drinking and my cousin was going to die. And I kind of like pushed my way into the emergency room where she was, and this is when it starts to get kind of groovy. So I went in and I saw her like completely unconscious, and I just put my hand on her, and I felt like a bolt of lightning coming through the top of my hand, moving through my body and out my hand, and it just kind of rippled through Carmen like this. And I remember seeing her, and I was like, "Oh, she's gonna be fine." And the guy said, "No, she's gonna die." And I said, "No." He said, "Somebody came in yesterday with less injuries. She's gonna die. You guys are gonna go to jail for whatever." And I was like, "No, she's gonna be fine." And then he grabbed my arm. "You can't be in here." And when he did, I had the vision of him beating his girlfriend or wife or someone the night before. And and it was just awful I felt her emotions, I felt his anger, and I was like, "Ah," and I was like, kind of ran into the bathroom, and I was just kind of sitting in the corner in the bathroom, and I didn't want to talk to him. And I said, "I do not want to talk to that nurse again. Keep him away from me." Um, and so anyway, they finally took me off to get my neck x-rayed. And the first x-ray came back and it was a broken neck. They said, "Your neck is broken." And I said, "Oh no." My neck can't be broken. That wasn't part of like what happened with my divine light, being of light. That wasn't part of my timeline. Like, oh no. And I put my hand on my neck, and that same bolt of lightning kind of went through my own body. And I said, "You need to retake that x-ray," which they don't ever do. And I said, "No, I want you to retake that x-ray." And so he took it. And the second x-ray, um, there was no break in my neck. Third, fourth, no break. And finally they said, "Okay, well, we don't know what's going on here, but we can't let you go unless you sign away your rights." And I said, "I will sign." I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm leaving." So I left, and I did not have a broken neck, but I had a severe case of whiplash. Like I could not turn my neck. I mean, I was 30 something years old and I was moving like, I was 110. My neck was severely injured. It was really, really painful. I remember that. So I came back to my life. There's a lot of things that happened that probably don't really need to talk about in this short interview. But when I got back to my life, I mean, all kinds of weird things were happening. It was almost like a portal opened up, and I started, like I told you, I couldn't even be in the space with someone without feeling all their feelings and knowing their thoughts, their deepest fear, their greatest sorrow, their joy. Like it was so overwhelming. It was like a download, like I was them. It wasn't even like I was getting something from them. It was like I was them, like we were one, and I knew everything. There was so much fear and so much sorrow and so much hiding and deceit and yes, love and joy and other things too, but it was just so overwhelming, and it wasn't something I wanted. And then I started like seeing auras around people, which, by the way, I didn't even have a vocabulary for most of this stuff that was happening, because it wasn't like I wasn't like the girl, the groovy girl, I mean, I was a model, I was a mother, I was, someone who was always seeking to be good and looking for truth, but I wasn't like a groovy, like, even meditate or so I was like, why am I seeing colors around people? Why do I know their thoughts? I was like really afraid to go out. And I did have some of the typical things that happen, like, and still today, like light really affects my eyes and sound. I just got remarried a couple of years ago, and this lovely man who's my husband, um, I told him, "You really don't want to marry me because, like, I don't watch TV. I don't go to big, crowded places like concerts, and, you know, I don't like loud noises." Like I've been living alone for 28 years by the time I got remarried, which is a long time. I'm used to being alone. So he's so sweet. He goes, "Oh, that sounds perfect." And so he like watches TV with headphones on. He's so sweet. And it's been a really, I think all marriages are challenging, but the union has been overall really beautiful. And I'm really grateful for that. But back then, I was just like shocked. Like I couldn't really be out in the sun too much, and my eyes were really sensitive, my ear, I could hear and I could feel everybody, and I really didn't want it. Like I guess some people would think of this as a blessing, and I was just thought of it as like I don't want this. It's too much. Like it's too much. I can't download this. I don't want to. And so I slowly like started to learn how to close that veil or close that door where I can still tap into it if I want to, but it's not going to be like hitting me like, you know, out of control. So I went to see my cousin 2 weeks after the car wreck. She was in a recovery hospital, and she was the one most, most impacted by the car wreck as far as like physical ailments. Um, she was this beautiful 40-year-old woman at the time that had these big, giant doe eyes and, olive skin and dark hair, and she was just gorgeous. She played the clarinet for the Dallas Opera, and she was a really talented musician. And so when I came into the room to see her, I was really shocked because it did not look like my cousin. Like, first of all, her face was bloated. She had rubber bands in all her teeth. Every bone in her body, well, in her face, had been broken from hitting the guardrail. And so her eye sockets were all messed up. And this is 2 weeks after, and she was still swollen. And so I had to like just calm myself down. I just said, Chrystal, this is your cousin and you love her. So then I kind of took a couple of breaths and I went over. Her mom was there, her doctors were there. They were all looking at me kind of angrily because I think because I was the one who invited her on this trip, though I wasn't driving, I think they had some kind of like, you did this to my daughter kind of thing going on. And I walked up to Carmen and then I had this most miraculous experience happen here. And I just, again, touched her and she was in coma and she immediately opened her eyes and she sat up in bed, which shocked her doctors, her nurses, and her mother. And she had the IV and she wobbled over to me somehow. And she came to me and she said, uh, Chrystal, I'm in the light. I'm gleaming. I've never been so radiant. I'm a star. And she went back into the bed and she went back to sleep. And it was like the most beautiful gift to me because it it's a message that I understood completely. And now I'll share with you what happened to me when I was a child. When I was a child in my dysfunctional home, I was awoken one morning by my mother when one of her, you know, hungover rages. I had been told to clean the grease off the ceiling in the kitchen, which I had been too tired taking care of my little sister and all my other chores, that I hadn't got to it. And so for some reason she woke up, it was like 6 in the morning and she was mad that I hadn't cleaned it up. So she came in, she dragged me by my hair, um, and threw me on the floor in the kitchen and pointed at this grease spot and said, why haven't you cleaned that? And I didn't even have an answer. I just got up there and started cleaning. But I started having this conversation with God, and that's when I told you I realized that this first experience of self-worth, that I am a good person. I'm not trying to avoid hell. But with that thought, I remember having this conversation with God, and I said, God, if you're real, I don't see why I can't know about that before I die. It seemed to me like kind of uh, it seemed like you were sort of cheating if you knew that God was real after you died. Like I wanted to know, like Moses did. I wanted to know before. I wanted the seas to part. And by the way, if you're God, you can do that. And then I asked him for one more thing, which I thought was even more impossible. I said, and if you are truly God, can you help my mom stop drinking? And with that, I turned around and I walked off this counter. And when you walk off a counter, it's like walking into an empty swimming pool. Like the physics of it is that your head starts to go down. And so my physical body started to fall towards the ground. And again, time slowed down. And I watched from a distance. And this time this is the first near-death experience I ever had when I was a kid. And I remember thinking, like, there's three of me. There was the physical body, there was a being that was also me that lived within this body, the soul essence. And then there was this omnipresent uh, observer. And of course, I didn't have language for all that. I was a kid, but this is how I define it now. And I didn't associate with the body or the omnipresent observer, who was, by the way, very dispassionate about my whole little girl story, poor pitiful me. Wasn't even buying into that story, and we'll talk about that later. But what I related to was the soul essence that lived within this body. That's what I identified with, even though all three were me. So I'm falling towards the ground, time slowed down. I find myself in this whirling time and space that you might think of as a tornado, not a tunnel. But I'm in the middle, and this swirling kind of space that has no noise, though it's like a tornado, is either going up or I'm falling down. I can't tell you which. Um, but then I ended up in this serene black night that was punctuated with lights in the distance. And what I was shown, it was like, there is no empty space in the universe. And those are the stars. And that's what you are. You are a radiant being of light. You are a star. And boom, with that, I was back in my body. But here's the thing, like a cat, I did not smash my head into the ground. I landed on my feet, which was amazing, right? Because then I ended up just standing there looking at the ground, and I was like kind of freaked out, like, what just happened? Like, how did I land on my feet? Because I mean, my head, I had got that close to the ground. I was so close to the ground, I could smell it. And all of a sudden I'm on my feet. I said, oh, well, I must have hit my head. You know, you try to rationalize. I saw stars and I must have gotten up and, you know, somehow not even knowing how I got up in here. That's how I got here. And he said, but surely you can't hit the ground and then, you know, not have a bump or something on your head. So I figured, I mean, I had to have somebody. So I ran to the bathroom and I looked for a bump, a scratch, something, nothing, nothing. And so I was like, Mark, I called my brother, God save me. And he's like, what? Again, in our household, God was only damned, right? He's like, what are you talking about? Do you need a straitjacket? I remember him saying those exact words to me. And I remember we both started laughing, ended up laughing on the ground. He's like, you've lost it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I fell. There's three of me, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so at the end of that, I remember telling my brother, listen, I know this sounds really weird, but I never want to forget it. I don't want to think 50 years from now, this is a dream. Can you be my witness? He's like, sure, I'll be your witness. That you're crazy? I'll be your witness. And I said, okay. So every year I would say to Mark, I'd be like, hey, Mark, do you remember? He's like, yes, I remember. Yes, I remember. And it's so cool because the universe is so divine. Like I have a witness to something that I would most likely believe at this point was a dream had I not had a witness. And the funny thing is that my brother, he became a minister and he doesn't even believe in the universe and the love the way that I do at all. And yet he's the one who is my witness, which is just kind of ironic and kind of funny. We actually have decided not to talk about these things so that we can maintain our friendship because he has a whole different paradigm. So what I mean by that is that what I was shown is that this is a kind and loving universe. There is no judgment but the judgment you bring upon yourself. You are loved far more than you could possibly imagine. You are loved so much that everything is happening for you and nothing is happening to you. The entire universe is orchestrated for your well-being. And when you leave this this earthly world, your energy doesn't suddenly change. Like wherever you're at energetically in this world, you're also in the next world because it's a kind and loving universe. And what I mean by that is like, if if I'm in a very low vibrational space, let's say, you know, like I'm a thief, I'm a murderer, I'm something like this, I'm just doing really bad stuff, but that's where my energy is and that's where I'm comfortable. And that's what I like, because that's what I'm doing. For whatever reason, that's what my soul has chosen. So when I leave this energetic space, planet Earth, and I go to the next realm, I don't all of a sudden change and all of a sudden heightened energy. I'm the same person. So I'm going to end up in a place where which is familiar, which would be with other murderers and killers and whatever, you know, thieves and whatever. But that's because it's a kind universe and because we have choice and autonomy. In other words, like if I had my children and I said, yeah, I have these children, but I'm going to force them like little robots to love me. I'm going to program them to love me. That's not the way love works. You see, love is like unconditional. Love is, it's beyond any kind of words of grace or compassion. And I was shown that this great love allows us to even hate our own creator. It allows us to hate our own creator. And so I was so shocked by this. And we get to choose our own energetic residence, whatever that may be. And for example, whatever, let's say my level of consciousness is, I'm still human, I'm still frail, I'm still broken, I'm still perfectly imperfect. Let's say there's an avatar, someone like Jesus or Buddha, who's a bit more sophisticated, more elevated. For them, hell would be my existence because they're so far above me. But for me, this is like heaven. And that's the way it is for all of us. And so when we leave this world, there's no like hell or heaven imposed upon us. It's what we get to choose. And we choose every day with our small and large choices. That's why it's so important that we move up on the energetic scale in our lives. In other words, when I say that, it's a simple thing as like in small and large ways, just choose to be more loving and kind and compassionate with yourself on an ongoing basis. And that's how you elevate your energy. And I was also shown like, the things that people think are really important. Let's say you give a lot of money to, I don't know, a school or something, but you do it um, not out of the goodness of your heart, but you do it because you want to be acknowledged, you want your name on a plaque, and you really could care less about the students. That's not the most kind and loving thing. I remember reading this story about a woman who had a near death similar to mine. And her story was that she had done all this goodness on the planet. Like she was this top executive, she had all these degrees, she was like super smart, she was a musician, she was an artist, she had all this stuff going for her. And she was shown the kindest thing she ever did. She was on her way to a meeting, and there was a woman sitting on a bench, like on waiting for a bus, and she just had her hands in her head, in her hands, and she was weeping. And this high-powered like woman was on her way to a meeting, and she was just drawn by compassion, probably a soul connection. And she stopped like in her tracks, and she went and did something out of the ordinary. And she just sat next to this woman and she put her arms around her, and she spoke to her in a way that was kind and loving and hopeful. And then she was, left and went on her merry way and went to work and all this stuff. But in her near death experience, she was shown how this woman was going to take her life. And because of that one kind act, she did not. So it's so amazing that this high-powered woman with had everything, had no idea that that was the most important thing she ever did in her entire life. And and that's true for all of us. These random acts of kindness, they matter. So she was shown that the most kind thing and loving thing that she could do was to care about another. And so I come back after this near death experience, and I'm really excited to write this book and tell the world that love is all that matters. But when I was a young woman, my goal in life was to create a family, to be married. I was a model, and that was sort of just a means to an end, because what I really wanted was love. So I got married, and I didn't go to college, and had children, and then I got divorced, and had always been very industrious. I always worked really hard, and things just tend to come easily for me. Like luckily I have a really good brain, and I can learn languages easy, and uh, just academics were really easy. I graduated magna cum laude when I finally went to college, but I didn't feel good enough ever. So I remember coming back and feeling a little overwhelmed by why me to write this book, and how was I going to do that if I was so broken and I was not healed enough to talk about love, because I didn't even know what that really meant. So the next 20 years were like this self journey of healing. First thing I did is I signed up immediately to go to college to take some writing courses, just as a non-degree seeking student. And my former husband was on the board of this college here in Dallas called UTD, and so the very next day I literally was sitting in classes. So I was sitting in classes, and the first thing that the professor said, and I just love how the universe works, because it was like the first thing that he said was like, there's this new discovery about dark matter. There is no empty space in the universe. Everything is connected. And I already knew that because of my near-death experience and some poignant, very prophetic dreams that I had post near-death experience. One of which I was shown that everything in the universe is energetically connected, geometric forms. And another one I think was really poignant for me, at least, is that this is right after the near death experience, and I was really confused, like, how am I supposed to write this book on love? And so I had this dream, and it was kind of back in biblical times. And we was walking up this mountain to go see the Virgin Mary, which is kind of funny because I'm not Catholic or anything. And she was at the base of this volcano that that was no longer active. And so there was this hordes of people, and I remember I was wearing the garb of the time, like the shoes, and the people were pushing, and there was the priest with all the big headwear and everything, and everybody was like pushing, and I said, this doesn't seem right to me, like pushing to go see the Virgin Mary, like no. So I remember I went out off onto a cliff, like outside the mountain, and I said, I'll just watch from here, which was probably 3 miles away from her, but I could see her down in the basin. And so she was sitting down there in the basin. She had this blue ball of light. And so she looked up like this, and it was almost like I was like right in front of her, and she took this ball of light and she threw it at me, and it hit me in the top of the head and went through my body. And it's like, I understood like that I was the embodiment of this goddess energy, this divine energy of female energy, and that I was supposed to tell the world that love is all that matters. And I remember it was like every cell in my body was vibrating, and the whole space around me was like this pink mist that smelled like roses. And it was just like this really glorious place. And then I remember thinking, but wait, my eyes are open, like this is real. I'm actually smelling flowers. And in that moment, there was fear, like I was like, it scared me. And then the moment that fear came, everything disappeared into a little pinpoint in the corner of the room. And I was shown that fear and love cannot exist in the same space. Basically, all there is in the universe is love, and everything else is an illusion. And that was a really big teaching, but it also verified for me that I was the right person to share this message on love. I'm a very poetic soul. I'm an artist. I do these big abstract paintings. I mean, my first painting, like 20 something years ago, sold for like $40,000, which was a lot of money back then, and still is. But I just, everything just sort of came easy for me. But writing was something that was always like a secret fear of mine. I guess I was a secret poet. I won Poet of the Year 3 years in a row. I won all these awards for my painting, but I didn't really feel like, that the way that I wrote, the way that I write was going to be accepted. So I'm very pragmatic, but also very poetic, which is a hard thing to mix. So I went to school and I took all these. I had wonderful teachers, by the way. I met exactly the right teachers I was supposed to. One in particular, a guy I'd like just to call out, was a guy named Robert Nelson, who was a really good mentor for me because he gave me the space to write. I wrote my first book, which was a really healing book about my childhood. I thought that was the book on love, but it really wasn't. That was just a cathartic book for me. But I would go in and see Robert on his office hours, and I would read to him. He would just sit there and weep. He was just the most beautiful soul. And he loved my writing. He really encouraged me and gave me the confidence to yes, indeed, write this book. So fast forward, I mean, I was able to finally navigate where I didn't feel everyone's feelings. I wasn't overwhelmed by this, and I worked on myself a lot. I told you I had a really severe neck injury, so I went to a chiropractor. I know Jeff is a chiropractor. I went to a chiropractor 3 times a week for over a year because my neck was so messed up. And it's supposed to be, I guess, a little curve in the neck, and I had a straight neck. And he would adjust me, and he was really nice. It was Alpha Biotics. He was a spiritual guy. It was really cool just to go and be in his presence. But he said, Crystal, if you would just do yoga, you could heal your own neck. And I'm like, what? Yoga? Isn't that what people do when they don't want to exercise? Because I was like the exercise queen. And he said, no, you need to try yoga. And so I went to my first yoga class, and it was like power yoga, but it was like, you could just call it boot camp yoga. It was insanely hard. And it really challenged me on so many levels, physically, mentally, spiritually. It was just this really, I mean, I think I went and threw up, truthfully. It was a hot room. They were doing this really, I'm very competitive, at least I was back then. And so like everyone's touching their toes, I was going to touch it, and no matter what. And I mean, I was throwing up. I didn't even go back to yoga for 3 months. I'm like, that yoga stuff, I don't know about that. And I went back and it became a really big part of my healing journey. I mean, I am a complete advocate of yoga because I feel like we have issues in our tissues and things that are lodged in our body. And these templates of energy that we call poses, they're so healing for the body and for the mind. And the discipline that you learn how to stay with your own discomfort and not run, and how to plug into some kind of higher power that's connected through the breath that we call prana, and all of these things. So now I've had studios. I have three yoga studios, two teacher training centers for the 200 and 300-hour Yoga Alliance schools. And I've been doing that for almost 30 years now, since the car wreck. And I've trained thousands of people, thousands, hundreds of teachers, populated Dallas with teachers that are love-based. The theme of our studio is Love is Why. So it became a center really for healing and for empowering others, which is what I really love to do. And mainly for the purpose of my soul mission, which we all have one. And everyone's soul mission is different. It doesn't have to be necessarily cure cancer or open yoga studios or any of this or write a book. I mean, it could just be like, be kinder to those around you. Could be a good mother. Could be, learn to forgive yourself, take better care of yourself. Everyone's mission is different. But my soul mission was, yes, to heal yourself from all this trauma of your childhood, learn to love yourself so that you can truly love others, and to speak your truth proudly. And because when I first started this journey, like even with yoga, like I was living the Bible Belt here in Dallas, and nobody was oming. And for me, vibration is such an important thing because I was shown the power of vibration, sound, and light. And so I lead sound bath every Friday night. I've been doing that also for some 30 years, with gongs and bowls and all of that. So I was one of the first people here in Dallas to chant Om. I remember I had a class of like 60 students. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to chant Om. You guys can join me if you like, or you can just listen. And I remember I was just like, oh, I was like sweating bullets. Nobody, I mean, absolutely nobody chanted with me. So the next day I said, I don't care, I'm going to do it again. And I got up there and I chanted Om. And now all over Dallas, we're Oming. This is an Om city. So I'm really proud of that, and people come to our sound bath. We have miraculous healings of mind, body, spirit, and it's just been really wonderful. And I do feel like, this whole journey, like it's very interesting what's happened, like going off a cliff and flipping and, healing my own neck and karma. By the way, karma, I just want to shout out to karma because her path was like really amazing too. I remember coming and visiting her, and she'd tell me things like there's three balls of light or three beings of light around me, and they have been with me since I was a child and for many lives. And I knew she was going to be okay. She had 18 operations, and it enhanced her musical ability. And apparently she was supposed to have brain damage, like 90% brain damage. Well, that didn't happen either. She only forgot 10 years of being married to two alcoholic husbands within those span of 10 years. Only thing she forgot, it enhanced her mental ability. She opened up her own real estate company, and she's just doing really fabulous. Of course, this was a big transformation from this beautiful face that she had, but her radiant soul came out, and she found the love of her life, and she's happy. And so, everything turns out the way it's supposed to. It was her path, and I'm really proud of her because it was a really challenging one. And we're still friends, so which is really lovely after all these years. And so I came back from this whole experience like quite transformed. It took some time to assimilate. I mean, just the upgrade, I guess, in energy field that happened, and the upgrade in just my whole living experience. I do want to say that even when I came back and I was given this mission to write a book, nothing set. Like I could have like come back and not done that. You know what I mean? Like it's always a choice. And so I had to do some really hard work on myself to even be able to stand up in front of anyone and say, guess what? My soul absolutely and unconditionally loves the divinity and the light of your soul. And it doesn't matter how many shadows you have wrapped around you. I see the truth of you. And the truth of you is pure love. So our lives are like a video, like shadows and light on the screen. It's just, when you go to a movie theater and they have this, you could have a horror film going on, or you could have a comedy or kindergarten, cartoons going on. And then the lights come back on. Nothing has happened to the screen. The screen is unaffected, unscathed, and that's our soul. Our soul absorbs all the energetic resonance and wisdom of having a visceral experience, but the soul is pure forever. And so one of the ways that I really talk about love is to be able to see the light not only in your own eyes, but you see it in everyone, in everything. And that means everyone and everything. Uh, and the more dark a person is, or the more shadows they have, or the more evil deeds they do, the more they need love, truthfully. So it's the great compassion, for those people, because it is true, what you do to others, you do to yourself, because it is an energetic universe.
Chrystal, thank you for sharing your life with us. You learned that our lives are supposed to be blissful, but for some reason, most of us get mixed up and have a lot of suffering in life. In your opinion, why is that?
Oh, that's a really good question. And the question is like, why is there so much suffering? The truth is that the soul comes in completely knowing that it's going to be challenged in such ways. And we kind of sign up for it. And why do we sign up for it? Because we can, because we are warriors of light, and we want that experience so that we can not only grow as a individuated soul, but also as part of a greater consciousness, group consciousness. And I know that that sounds all like, airy fairy, lovely in a theoretical sense, but when you're in that dark night, it's so hard. And it's not kind to tell someone, like, when they're suffering, oh, you chose this. Oh, you're part of a group consciousness. You're part of the universal, love bubble that needed to have this experience. But so what I would say is, like, when someone's in this deep suffering, I just simply say, I'm sorry, because I know it hurts. But I also know that, we are never given more than we can handle. And I see that light in people. And when you see it, they can see it for themselves. And just poignantly this morning, I was talking with a woman who's going through some really hard times. She's going to lose everything. And she was like, why is this happening to me? And I'm like, I know it's horrible to lose everything, because I've been there. I've been through that experience. And I said, but when you think about it, we're going to lose everything anyway, including our lives at the end of this. So it's not really, as we start to shed our skin, even aging is part of that. You're losing your beauty, you're losing your ability to think fast, you're losing your agility, you're losing everything that maybe once you thought was you. And yet the truth is, what really is valuable, we can never lose, and we can never be hurt. You can never actually be hurt. Only your body can be hurt, but the true essence of you, as I said, when there is great pain and suffering, you are out of your body. This is not an unkind universe, and you are never tortured. This is not karmic. This is not like you deserve this. You're going to come back as a cockroach. This is not the kind of universe we live in. This is a universe where what would bring you joy, like your true joy, and that true joy might be, I really want to experience contrast, shadows. I really want to conquer this, not only for me, but for all of humanity who's ever experienced this. I get to do this in the individuated way that I can. And the whole of creation, like one little wave on the ocean, is going to change because of it. And that makes me excited. Just like when I came back and I'm going to write this book. I mean, it was daunting. I didn't feel worthy. I mean, I didn't even feel like intellectually I could actually do it in a way that would be appreciated, because the way that I think is so poetic and so different. So you have to just like trust, and each one of us has a gift, and that gift we get to experience, and we have different physical bodies. I believe that we come back many times to have many different experiences. And sometimes we come back in the contrast of what it was. Like maybe we come in opulence in one life and abstract poverty in the next, so that we know this feeling visibly. So it's kind of like this. Like if I told you, take a bite of this apple, and you do, and you chew it, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so sweet. It's so delicious. You would actually understand what it's like, as opposed to I taught you about an apple intellectually. Like I wrote you poetry about an apple. I gave you the chemical breakdown of an apple, and I drew you pictures of an apple, and I did all these things, but you never were able to bite the apple. Would you really know? And that's what life is. And again, some of us are warriors. And we're like, some come in as bodhisattvas, meaning that they come in as a sacrificial lamb to help another. I mean, there is such a grander span. Like, if you think about it, like this, we're one little planet and one little galaxy, one little Milky Way, one little universe of a multiverse. Like, there's so much more than what we experience here. And there's a grander context for it all. So when I can't really make, and it's still hard for me when I see such great suffering, when I can't really reconcile that with a kind and loving universe, then I drop into this place of faith. Like that I trust in goodness. And why? Because what's my alternative is to trust in hate and fear. And what would that do but create more hate and fear? And I think I told you that at the very beginning, when I was a child, I decided I didn't care if there is a heaven or a hell or a grander context. Truthfully, I just want it to be good. And I think that that's an innate seed within all of us. After we move away from all the fear and all the shadows and all the protection and all the shields and all the walls that we put up because we want to feel safe, the essence of us. So if the seed and the source are never separate, and if the source of the universe is love, then that's what we are. And however we come in to embody that in a visual way is a gift. It's a great gift. We're given the gift that we can even hate our creator. We're not forced to love God. That would be kind of gross, truthfully. You're forced to love me. I created you. No, you're free. You're free to have this experience. And I think there's even great sorrow in the universe when we choose these less than radiant paths. By the way, no one will be left behind. No one will be forsaken. No one will be abandoned. But we might take the long way home. We might get stuck in the darkness. We might go down into the deep dungeon of hell, but it's a choice. It's not, it's not the ultimate destiny, though. And even in these dark, dark places, there's angels and beings and guides and teachers always by your side because it's a loving universe. And what happens in this like 89 years, 100 years, whatever, we're going to be living 120, I guess, that's what they say, is a speck. It's nothing in the span of eternity. It's absolutely nothing. And so we get to do this. We signed up for it. We were excited about it. Yes, bring the sorrow. Yes, I want the mother that pulls my hair out and gives me bruises and tells me I'm worthless. I want that so that I can heal that. Yes, bring it. I'm excited about that. And my soul knew that this is a path I would take. And then I get to write about love, but from a place like anyone can look in my eyes, and say, when I say I love you, they know that I've seen the dark night of the soul. I've been raped, I've been pillaged, I've had it all. And yet I still choose love. And when you see that in someone, then you see it in yourself because we are all mirrors. So anyone listening to these words, they're meant for you because you are a powerful being of light. How do I know? Because I am. That's how I know. And that's my message right there. Is like I get to, I get to, and I have my entire life, have all this pain and sorrow so that I can still choose to see the light in myself, in others. I buy myself white roses every week. And I wake up in the morning and I say really kind things to myself, like, Chrystal, you're doing a good job. I love you. You matter. You are worthy. And the reason I do this is because I want my cup to be filled so that I have enough to give to others, so that I'm not looking outside of me for someone to give me flowers. to tell me these things. And my cup is like a cup of light spilling out, and I have something to give. And then everyone in my presence gets to enjoy that light and that love and see it in themselves. And again, this is a gift to be alive, and it's not easy. I think this planet is one of the most challenging, but I think there's lines and millions of souls just waiting to be able to come to this planet because of the freedom and the accelerated growth that happens here. And you have to be a certain level of consciousness even to come to this kind of school. You have to be pretty fierce. And it's not just about one life, it's about your soul. And you could choose to never come back here if you wanted. But most of us, we want to come back. We want to continue on. We want until we don't. I mean, sometimes in my world when it's really, really dark, and I feel the suffering of others, and it resonates with the suffering within me. And I'm like, I don't want to come back here. Like, I want to go to a world of only light. I have those moments too, so I totally get it. But the truth is, it's a gift, and it's tough, and there is sorrow, but it's all worth it. Love is the answer. And at the end of the day, if my soul shines a little bit brighter as a result of this life, then my life has been a success. Like that woman on the bench, like if I've made just a difference in one person's life, I have created universes. It's such an amazing thing that we get to be co-creators of our own existence and all the universes. So I'm really honored and really grateful to have this opportunity to speak about it, and really for platforms like this. So thank you, Jeff, where we can commune and share and unite as beings of light.
Chrystal, your book is called Love Letters to the Soul. How did you come up with that title?
I'm going to show you really quickly. This is my book, and you see the sheep.
Mhm.
So when I was thinking about writing this book, I think I told you I'm really poetic, so I kind of just think in poetry. And I wanted to write a book that when I was going through my healing the last 20 years, I remember I've read, I mean, I'm a voracious reader. I read probably 3 or 4 books a week for the last 20 years, um, 30 years even. But what I wanted to, when I was going through my own healing process, a lot of books, they had, some really good tips. I went through all the psychological books, then I went through all the religious books, and then I went through all the spiritual books. And what I found is like so many books would take me down into such a dark place, even though they were like talking about light. And let's give an example of like Armageddon, choose love, but then there's Armageddon if you don't. And I was like, that is not the experience that I had. So I wrote a book, Jeff, that if wherever page you open it to, you will find a loving companion, a friend, a soul companion of many lives who absolutely loves you, who basically came back to this planet to find you, to tell you that you're worthy, to tell you that you're loved, and to give you just some advice on how to live a more loving existence. And it's such an honor for me to do this. And so I was like, this is like a love letter. This is like my soul telling your soul, I love you. I'm here for you. I've been with you for eons of time, and I will be with you forever because we are eternal beings. So if you're in my presence and I'm in yours, then we're soulmates. And I love you. I love the light in you. I don't even have to know you. I don't personally, on a physical level, like in this embodiment, I know your soul. If you have this book in your hands, it's a love letter to you. And so I wanted to write that book, where the book that I could never find, the book that was that on that dark night of the soul when I just needed a friend and I couldn't find a friend, that I had a source. I mean, there's a couple of really good books that I love that have been very much like that, but I wanted it to be in my words. I wanted it to be my soul speaking to yours, and in the way that I could, in the way that resonates with whoever reads this book, will be a resonant energy that will be comforting. And already it's been such a blessing to me because I get all these emails and texts and people telling me I keep your book by my side, or I've been going through this really great change in my life and crisis, and I opened it up and there was this, because there's a lot of quotes in the book, and there was this quote that just really resonated with me, and I'm so grateful. And so that's why I did it. And the sheep, I mean, a lot of people ask me about the sheep. That was also like a spiritual inspiration. I was literally designing the book. I designed the cover of my book myself because, as I told you, I'm an artist. And I was just drawn to these sheep. And I'm like, why sheep? And, and I started to do some research on sheep. And sheep are a spiritual community. They're kind and they're gentle. And they're just like this, you know, pure giving animal, like their entire life. Their fur, their wool is, everything about them is just to give and to be of service. And it's a community. They don't do well on their own. They need the community. And so it was just a really beautiful message for me. And so people ask me all the time, why the sheep? And that's why the sheep, because they're just kind, benevolent, gentle animals who are in service and live in communities and make a difference. I think as more people embody the message of love, we hit this tipping point on the planet where we shift the energy as a community. And that's really part of what I really, really find so rewarding, is that I can be part of that community, spiritual community that's shifting the energy of the planet to a more loving vibration.
Well, if people want to find out more about your book, do they go to your website or Amazon?
Well, I do. I just launched my website, and it's so beautiful. I had such great web designers and that were helping me. It's called crystalraysoul.com. And yes, you can get my book there, and you can get it on Amazon. The Kindle's up, and I'm also doing, because so many people have requested that I do it with my own voice, and I always love it when an author reads her or his own book because of the resonant energy that's so healing. So I'm about halfway through recording the book, so that's soon to be up, the audio book. But you can find it at my website. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it anywhere. It's just a wonderful gift that I get to offer to everyone. I hope that everyone can get the book and read it, that it would serve not everyone in the world, but everyone that it would serve. That's what makes me happy.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
I am, and that in that case, they should go to my website, because there's a page on my website that says "Meet Me," just at the very top, just say "Meet Me," and then fill that out, and I will get back in touch with you.
All right, great. Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one more positive message?
The message that I will leave you with is the mantra of my own life, and that is that love is all that matters. Um, if you take nothing away from this conversation, as I said at the beginning, really the near-death experience is kind of like not the important part of what happened to me. The important part of what happened is that I realized the truth of my own existence and the truth of all existence, and I get to share it with you. And that is that love is all that matters. So the way that I live my life is I always ask myself really important, poignant question, especially in times when I'm confused or I'm angry or I'm moving on automatic. And the question is always this: what is my most loving response to this person, to this place, to this thing? And truthfully, my most loving response sometimes is not as kind or benevolent as I would like it to be, but it's always the best that I have in that moment. And I know, because I'm asking the question. I ask the question, what is my most loving response? What is my most loving word? Kindness, compassion, and I don't always live up to my highest, most radiant version of self, but I feel like it's a process, and every day a better and better. And so I think if we all just keep asking the question, then it gets better slowly. We evolve, and I think the first part of change is really just awareness. And so by asking that question, we become aware there's a different way to move through this life than just to move from fear. And that way is love.
Crystal, thank you for your message and thank you for being my guest.
So grateful for you, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.